6 months later, the NASA International Xenobiological Research Center looked very different. A new dome-shaped building stood next to the original facility, its architecture clearly alien in design. The permanent Galactic Academy research base was now fully operational. Susan walked across the courtyard between the buildings, carrying a tablet with her latest research findings. Students from a dozen alien worlds moved around her, each studying some aspect of Earth's unique biology. Inside the dome, she found Verex teaching a class of new alien arrivals. His once purely muscular frame had slimmed somewhat as he devoted himself to scientific pursuits rather than combat training. And this, he was saying, pointing to a display showing a Brazilian wandering spider, is the creature that taught me the most important lesson of my life. The alien students murmured among themselves, eyeing the small arachnid with a mixture of fear and fascination. On my world, and perhaps on yours, Verex continued, we measure power by size and physical strength. But here on Earth, evolution took a different path. Here, some of the deadliest organisms are the smallest. He noticed Susan and smiled. Ah, perfect timing. Students, this is Professor Susan Matthews, Earth's leading arachnologist and the scientist who saved my life. Susan nodded to the class. Welcome to Earth. I trust Verex has impressed upon you the importance of following safety protocols. The students nodded vigorously. Word of Verex's near-death experience had spread throughout the Galactic Academy. No one wanted to repeat his mistake. After the class, Susan and Verex walked to the lab where Melix was analyzing the properties of spider silk. Your new students seem properly terrified of our wildlife, Susan said with a smile. Verex laughed. As they should be. Better fearful than foolish, like I was. Melix looked up from his work. The latest tests on spider silk are amazing. If we can replicate this at scale, it could revolutionize construction throughout the galaxy. Dr. Carter and Jack entered the lab, accompanied by Professor Zilthorax and a delegation of high-ranking aliens Susan didn't recognize. Ah, there you are, Professor Zilthorax said. These are the researchers I was telling you about. Susan, Verex, Melix, the Galactic Council has approved our proposal. What proposal? Susan asked. Dr. Carter grinned. Earth has been designated a protected biological preserve. The entire planet is now under galactic protection as a site of exceptional evolutionary significance. One of the visiting aliens stepped forward. Your world has developed biological solutions unlike any we've seen in our exploration of 3,000 planets. The spider venom alone has led to breakthroughs in treating 17 previously incurable diseases in various species. Jack, who now served as security chief for the joint human-alien facility, looked pleased. Turns out nearly getting killed by a spider and starting an interstellar incident was the best thing that could have happened. I wouldn't go that far, Verex said, touching the small scar on his hand where the spider had bitten him. Thelora, who had become the facility's cultural exchange officer, joined them. The first public tour group from Kroner arrives tomorrow. 20 civilians eager to see Earth's wildlife up close. Not too close, I hope, Susan said. Don't worry, Verex assured her. I personally designed the safety briefing. No one will be handling venomous creatures. That evening, they gathered on the facility's roof to watch the sunset. The first stars were becoming visible in the darkening sky. I never imagined one small incident would change so much, Susan said. A year ago, most of the galaxy didn't even know Earth existed. Verex nodded. And I never imagined a tiny spider would change the course of my life. I was training to lead armies. Now I'm teaching biology. Professor Zilthorax looked out at the forest surrounding the facility. Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from unexpected sources. Your small planet has taught the galaxy a big lesson in humility. As night fell, they could see the lights of the alien research ships in orbit around Earth, studying the planet that had surprised them all. To Earth's tiny, mighty creatures, Verex said, raising a glass in toast. May we continue to learn from them. And to unexpected friendships, Susan added, raising her own glass. Across the stars. In the garden below, unseen in the darkness, a small spider began to spin its web, continuing the ancient work of its kind, unaware of its place in the new relationship between Earth and the stars. Verex woke slowly, his eyes open to find a white ceiling above him. For a moment, he was confused. Then the memories came flooding back. The spider, the bite, the burning pain that had spread through his body. "He's awake," Susan called out, leaning forward in her chair beside his bed. Dr. Carter hurried over, checking the monitors. "How do you feel, Verex?" The warrior tried to sit up, but found his normally powerful muscles weak and shaky. "Like I was hit by a meteor," he said, his voice raspy. Professor Zilthorax entered the room, followed by Melix and Thalora. Relief was visible in their alien features. "You gave us quite a scare," Professor Zilthorax said. "For a while, we thought we might lose you." Verex looked at his hand where the spider had bitten him. A small purple mark remained, a permanent reminder of his brush with death. "The tiny creature," he said slowly. "It nearly killed me." Susan nodded. "The venom attacked your nervous system. Because your species evolved from arthropod-like ancestors, your biology was particularly vulnerable." "I don't understand," Verex said, struggling to process this information. "How could something so small be so deadly to me? I've fought beasts 10 times my size." Dr. Carter checked Verex's reflexes. "Size isn't everything in nature. Some of Earth's deadliest creatures are microscopic. Our modified antivenin saved you," Melix explained excitedly. "Susan figured out how to make it work with your chronarian biology." Verex turned to Susan with new respect in his eyes. "You saved me, after I ignored your warnings." Susan smiled. "That's what we do. We help each other, regardless of past behavior." Jack entered the room. "Good news. The warships have acknowledged the professor's message and are standing down. No interstellar incident today." Verex looked embarrassed. "Warships? My actions nearly caused a conflict between our worlds." Professor Zilthorax nodded gravely. "When a high-ranking chronarian is injured, it triggers automatic defensive protocols. But fortunately, the humans' quick action prevented disaster on multiple fronts." Over the next few days, Verex regained his strength, but something had changed in the mighty warrior. He spent hours in the research center's library, studying Earth's biology. He asked Susan endless questions about spiders, venom, and evolution. One afternoon, the research team found him in the garden, carefully watching a small garden spider build its web. "Aren't you going to squash it?" Thalora asked, only half joking. Verex shook his head. "I'm observing, learning." "What exactly are you learning?" Susan asked, kneeling beside him. "That true power comes in many forms," Verex said thoughtfully. "On my world, strength is measured by size and force. But here on Earth, you've evolved different kinds of power: venom, stealth, adaptation." Professor Zilthorax joined them. "The Galactic Academy will be most interested in our findings. Earth's biodiversity contains lessons we never expected to learn." "I've been thinking," Verex said, standing up to his full height. "Our mission was to study Earth's apex predators. I believe we should include small creatures in that category. The spider that nearly killed me is as much an apex predator as any large carnivore." Dr. Carter nodded in agreement. "That's a wise observation. In nature, dominance takes many forms." Melix was scanning nearby plants. The microorganisms alone on this planet could revolutionize our understanding of biology. We've barely scratched the surface. Jack, who had been skeptical of the aliens from the beginning, found himself respecting their newfound humility. "So what happens next with your research?" Professor Zilthorax's skin brightened with excitement. "I've proposed that the Galactic Academy establish a permanent research base here on Earth. Your planet is a treasure trove of evolutionary solutions we've never encountered." Susan looked pleased. "And what about you, Verex? Will you be returning to warrior duties?" Verex watched the small spider completing its web. I think I may request reassignment to the Academy's Biological Research Division. I find I have much to learn from Earth's small but mighty creatures. The group stood in comfortable silence, watching the spider's intricate work. The tiny creature, unaware of its role in changing interstellar relations, continued spinning its web in the afternoon sun. The lab became a flurry of activity. Susan and Melix analyzed the Cronarian biological data, while Dr. Carter monitored Verex in the medical wing. Philora assisted by translating complex Cronarian medical terms. "This is incredible," Susan said, examining the alien data. "Cronarian nervous systems evolved from something similar to our arthropods, but much more advanced." Melix nodded. "Our ancestors were like your insects, but larger and more complex. Over millions of years, we developed into our current form. That explains why the venom affects Verex so severely," Susan said. "It's attacking pathways in his nervous system that are fundamental to your species." Professor Zilforax entered the lab. His normally proud posture was gone, replaced by worried stooping. "What progress have you made?" "Verex's condition worsens by the minute. We're working on a modified antivenin," Susan explained. "But we need to test it on tissue samples first." Jack appeared at the door. "Bad news. I just got word that 3 Cronarian warships have entered Earth's solar system. They'll be here in 48 hours. Professor Zilforax looked away. A standard response to a potential attack on a high-ranking citizen. I couldn't stop the automatic alert when I accessed our biological database. So we have 48 hours to save Verex and prevent an interstellar war," Jack said grimly. Dr. Carter joined them, looking exhausted. "Verex is stabilized for now, but his organs are beginning to shut down. The venom is spreading through his system faster than we anticipated." Susan turned to her microscope. "I think I have something. The venom protein binds to specific receptors in the nervous system. If we can create a molecule that binds to the venom instead. But it would need to be compatible with Cronarian biology," Melix added. "Exactly," Susan said. "And based on your data, I think we can modify our existing antivenin to work." They worked through the night. Susan and Melix barely spoke, focused entirely on their task. Dr. Carter moved between the lab and Verex's bedside, providing updates on his condition. Jack coordinated with Earth's defense agencies, preparing for the possible arrival of hostile alien ships. Professor Zilforax paced, occasionally providing insights into Cronarian physiology when asked. Philora helped by running simulations on how different compounds might interact with Verex's system. By morning, Susan held up a small vial of clear liquid. "I think this is it. Our best chance." Melix scanned it with his device. The molecular structure should bind to the venom proteins without harming Cronarian cells. "Should?" Professor Zilforax asked anxiously. "We can't be 100% certain without testing," Susan admitted. "But we don't have time for extensive trials." They gathered around Verex's bed. The mighty warrior was now pale and still. His breathing was shallow, his eyes closed. Monitoring equipment showed his vital signs growing weaker by the minute. "If we don't try this, he'll die," Dr. Carter said simply. Professor Zilforax looked at Verex, then at the humans. "You have no reason to help him. He mocked your world, disrespected your warnings." "That's not how we do things," Jack said. "Everyone deserves a chance." Susan prepared the injection. "This needs to go directly into his bloodstream near his heart. The venom concentration is highest there." Dr. Carter carefully administered the modified antivenin. For several long minutes, nothing happened. The room was silent except for the beeping of the monitoring equipment. Then Verex gasped. His back arched slightly. The monitors showed a sudden spike in activity. "Is that good or bad?" Jack asked tensely. "I don't know," Susan admitted. "His system is reacting to the antivenin." Verex's body relaxed. His breathing became more regular. Slowly, his skin began to return to its normal purple color. Melix scanned him. The venom proteins are being neutralized. The antivenin is binding to them as predicted. Professor Zilforax's breathing tubes fluttered with emotion. You've done it. You've saved him. Dr. Carter checked the monitors. He's stabilizing, but he's not out of danger yet. The next few hours will be critical. As they watched Verex's steady improvement, Susan finally allowed herself to relax slightly. It's working better than I hoped. Professor Zilforax turned to the humans. I must contact our ships. Tell them there was no attack, only a scientific misunderstanding. Jack nodded. I'll help you establish communication with them. As they left the room, Susan sat down heavily in a chair beside Verex's bed. I can't believe a tiny spider almost caused an interstellar war. Dr. Carter squeezed her shoulder. And I can't believe you found a way to save him. Your knowledge of arachnids just prevented a disaster. If he pulls through, Susan reminded him, we're not finished yet. Chaos erupted in the small research station. Verex's massive body thrashed on the table as Dr. Carter tried to stabilize him. We need to get him back to the main facility, Dr. Carter said urgently. Our equipment here is too limited. Professor Zilforax's skin had turned almost white with fear. How is this possible? Our bodies can resist toxins from 3 different star systems. Susan was rapidly searching through her database. The venom attacks the nervous system. It causes the release of neurotransmitters including acetylcholine, which leads to severe muscle spasms and paralysis. Melix scanned Verex's body with trembling hands. His system is being overwhelmed. His internal defenses are attacking his own cells. The helicopter, Jack said, already on his radio. I'm calling for emergency transport back to the center. Philura helped Dr. Carter prepare Verex for transport. The warrior's breathing was now shallow and rapid. His eyes were open but unfocused. This was deliberate. Professor Zilforax suddenly hissed, turning to Susan. You knew this would happen. Susan stepped back, shocked. What? No. I warned him. We all warned him. You humans set a trap for us, the professor continued, his voice rising. You wanted to show your power by killing our strongest warrior. Jack moved between them. That's ridiculous. No one wanted this to happen. Then save him, Professor Zilforax demanded. Outside, the sound of helicopter blades cut through the air. Jack and Dr. Carter carefully moved Verex onto a stretcher. We have antivenin for humans, Dr. Carter explained as they worked. But it might not work on Cronarian physiology. It could even make things worse. The professor's breathing tubes flared with anger. If he dies, this means war. The Cronarian Empire will not tolerate an attack on our people. Susan grabbed her equipment, including the container with the spider. I need to study how the venom is affecting him. There might be a way to counteract it. They loaded Verex onto the helicopter. His convulsions had stopped, but only because his muscles were becoming paralyzed. His skin now had a grayish-blue tint. During the flight, Susan and Melix worked together, comparing the spider's venom glands to samples of Verex's blood. This is fascinating, Melix said, his scientific curiosity temporarily overcoming his fear. The venom is targeting specific cell structures in his body. Susan nodded. Structures that don't exist in humans the same way. That's why it's affecting him so severely. Dr. Carter monitored Verex's vital signs. His heart rate is off the charts. Whatever that venom is doing, it's working faster in his system than it would in a human's. When they arrived at the main research facility, a team of human and alien scientists was waiting. They rushed Verex to the medical wing. In the lab, Susan worked frantically with Melix to understand what was happening. They projected their findings onto a large screen. Look at this, Susan said, pointing to a microscopic image. Verex's nervous system shares structural similarities with Earth arthropods, but it's more complex. The venom is designed to attack insect nervous systems, but his is similar enough that it's affected. And because his nervous system is more advanced than an insect's, Melix added, the effect is catastrophic. The venom is causing a cascading failure. Professor Zilthorax paced the room. I've contacted our homeworld. They're sending a medical ship, but it won't arrive for 2 Earth days. Jack, who had been quiet, finally spoke. He doesn't have 2 days, does he? Susan and Dr. Carter exchanged grim looks. No, Dr. Carter admitted. Based on how quickly the venom is spreading, he has hours at most. Professor Zilthorax's breathing tubes flattened against his head, a sign of deep distress. Then he is lost, and there will be consequences. There's one possibility, Susan said, looking up from her microscope. We could try to synthesize a modified antivenin using elements from both our worlds. How? Melix asked eagerly. The standard antivenin works by binding to the venom molecules before they can attach to nerve receptors, Susan explained. If we could alter it to work with Cornerian biology, that would require complete access to our biological data, Professor Zilthorax said. Information we have never shared with any species. It's that or watch Verex die, Dr. Carter said bluntly. The professor stood still for a long moment. Then he reached into his robes and removed a small crystal device. This contains our complete biological database, he said quietly. Save him, and perhaps we can avoid a war between our worlds. Susan shook her head firmly. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Dangerous for whom? Verex laughed, his voice booming in the small research station. For this tiny creature, or for the champion warrior of the Cornerian Empire. Dr. Carter stepped forward. It's against our protocols to handle venomous species unnecessarily. Your human protocols don't apply to me, Verex said. He turned to Professor Zilthorax. Tell them, Professor. Explain how our biology is superior. Professor Zilthorax considered for a moment. It would be an interesting experiment. Cornerian skin is 5 times thicker than human skin. Our immune systems can neutralize most toxins in seconds. That's on your world, Jack pointed out. Earth toxins evolved differently. Melix looked nervous, his breathing tubes fluttering. Perhaps we should run tests first. Analyze the venom's composition. Philura nodded in agreement. A more scientific approach seems wise. Verex wasn't listening. He reached for the container holding the spider. Susan quickly moved it away. This isn't a game, she said, her voice tight with anger. This spider's venom can kill a human in hours. Then it's fortunate I'm not human, Verex said with a smirk. Professor Zilthorax made a decision. I believe this could be educational. The purpose of our mission is to understand Earth's biology. What better way than through direct observation? Dr. Carter looked alarmed. Professor, I must object. We don't know how. The decision is made, Professor Zilthorax interrupted. Susan, please prepare the demonstration. Susan looked at Dr. Carter helplessly. He gave a small nod, indicating they had little choice but to comply with their guest's wishes. With reluctance, Susan placed the container on a table in the center of the room. Everyone gathered around. If we're doing this, she said firmly, we do it my way. The spider stays in the container. Verex can observe through the clear plastic. Verex snorted. What use is that? I want to feel its weight, test its strength. That's not happening, Jack said, stepping closer to the table. Tension filled the room. Melix and Thiloret exchanged worried glances. Suddenly, Verex moved with surprising speed. He snatched the container from the table, popped the lid open, and turned it upside down over his open palm. The spider fell onto his purple skin. Verex, Professor Zilthorax shouted. That was not authorized. For a moment, everyone froze. The brown spider sat motionless on Verex's palm. The warrior grinned triumphantly. See, it does nothing. Your deadliest creature is no match for. The spider moved. Perhaps sensing danger or simply seeking escape, it scurried across Verex's palm. The alien skin must have felt strange to the spider. Too smooth, too cool, too alien. The spider did what millions of years of evolution had programmed it to do when threatened. It bit. At first, Verex laughed. A pinch. This is your deadly weapon. He lifted his other hand to flick the spider away, but Susan quickly offered the container. In here, please. Don't harm it. Verex allowed her to recapture the spider, still smiling at what he saw as a victory. Your deadly predator failed. Human. I feel nothing. Dr. Carter was already reaching for his medical kit. Sit down, Verex. We need to monitor you. For what? A pinprick. Verex boasted. Our bodies neutralize toxins instantly. But even as he spoke, Verex's voice changed. A slight slur affected his words. He frowned, looking down at his hand where a small red mark was now visible on his purple skin. I feel strange, he said, swaying slightly. Professor Zilforax moved to his side. Verex? What is happening? The warrior's breathing became labored. His eyes widened with sudden fear. My chest. Burns. My muscles. Not responding correctly. He took a step forward and stumbled. Jack and Dr. Carter caught him before he hit the floor. Get him on the table, Dr. Carter ordered. Susan, what are the symptoms of this spider's bite in humans? Susan was already pulling up information on her tablet. Elevated heart rate, sweating, salivation, then muscle paralysis, respiratory difficulty. Verex began to convulse, his massive body shaking violently. His skin turned from purple to a sickly gray. Foam appeared at the corners of his mouth. This is impossible, Professor Zilforax whispered, his voice filled with horror. No toxin should affect a chronarian this way. Melix scanned Verex frantically. His nervous system is shutting down. We must do something. Susan and Dr. Carter looked at each other, the same terrifying thought in their minds. Earth's tiny spider was killing the mightiest warrior in the galaxy. The research team flew to Brazil the next day. Their small plane landed at a remote airstrip surrounded by lush green rainforest. Heat and humidity hit them like a wall as they stepped onto the tarmac. The Amazon contains more species than anywhere else on Earth, Susan explained as they unloaded their equipment. Some scientists think we've only discovered about 10% of what lives here. Professor Zilforax's skin changed to a lighter shade of purple, a sign of excitement among his species, a perfect laboratory for our studies. Melix was already scanning the nearby trees. I'm detecting over 50 different life forms within 20 meters of us. Verex looked around, unimpressed. It's hot and wet. Our jungle moon has similar conditions, but with proper predators. They traveled by boat up a narrow river. Jack steered while Dr. Carter pointed out wildlife. Monkeys swung through trees above them. Colorful birds flew overhead. A caiman watched them from the water's edge, only its eyes and snout visible. That reptile, Verex said, pointing at the caiman. Is it dangerous? Jack nodded. It could drag you underwater and drown you. They've been hunting that way for millions of years. At least it's a proper size for a predator, Verex said, though I could still break its jaw with one hand. Susan exchanged a tired look with Dr. Carter. The warrior's arrogance was becoming tiresome. They arrived at a small research station built on stilts above the forest floor. After settling in, they began their first expedition into the rainforest. Susan led the way, matchsheet in hand to clear vines when necessary. Watch where you step, she warned, and don't touch anything without asking first. Melix was in heaven, recording data on countless insects and plants. Thelora studied how different species interacted. Professor Zilforax collected soil samples from various locations. Verex, however, grew increasingly bored. When will we find something exciting? Something worthy of study. Everything here is worthy of study, Dr. Carter said firmly. They stopped in a small clearing. Susan knelt next to a fallen log and carefully turned it over. She smiled broadly at what she found underneath. Everyone, come look at this. Carefully. The group gathered around. Under the log was a large brown spider about the size of a human hand. The Brazilian wandering spider, Susan said with reverence. One of the most venomous spiders on Earth. Melix moved closer, scanning the creature. Such a simple design, yet so effective. Thelura recorded the spider's movements. It doesn't seem aggressive. They usually aren't unless threatened, Susan explained. But their venom is neurotoxic. It can cause breathing problems, paralysis, and in some cases, death. Varric snorted. This tiny thing. Deadly. I could squash it with my finger. Susan looked up sharply. Please don't. We're here to observe, not harm. Besides, you wouldn't want to risk getting bitten. Varric puffed out his chest. Cronarian's skin is thick and resistant to toxins. Your earth poisons wouldn't affect me. That's not necessarily true, Dr. Carter said. Your biology is different from ours. We don't know how earth venoms might affect you. Susan carefully collected the spider in a clear container. I'd like to study this specimen back at the station. They're becoming rare due to habitat loss. As they walked back, Varric kept pace with Susan. Let me see that creature up close when we return. I want to examine this so-called deadly predator. It's not a toy, Susan said firmly. It's a living creature deserving respect. Is that fear I hear in your voice? Varric taunted. Are you humans so afraid of your own world? Jack stepped between them. It's not fear, it's wisdom. Something your people could learn from us. Varric laughed. Wisdom, or weakness disguised as caution. Back at the station, Susan placed the container with the spider on a table in the lab area. Varric stood nearby, watching the creature with increasing interest. So small, he muttered, yet you claim it's deadly. Professor Zilphorax joined them. Perhaps a demonstration would be educational. Show us how this creature hunts. Susan hesitated. That would stress the spider unnecessarily. Then let me hold it, Varric demanded. I want to test these claims myself. The next morning, the study officially began. Dr. Carter had arranged for the alien students to visit different ecosystems around the research center. Their first stop was a small lake half a mile from the main building. Susan crouched by the water's edge and gently scooped up a handful of water. Look at this, she said, holding it up to Melix. Even in this small amount, there are thousands of microorganisms. Melix leaned in, his scanning device humming. Fascinating. So much life in such a tiny space. Varric stood at a distance, arms crossed over his massive chest. Tiny creatures with no purpose. On Kronar, even our smallest life forms serve the ecosystem. Susan smiled patiently. These tiny creatures are the foundation of our food chain. Without them, nothing larger could exist. Professor Zilphorax took notes as Thelura collected water samples. Your planet has evolved differently than ours. We have fewer species, but each is more specialized. As they continued around the lake, Jack pointed out a snake sunning itself on a rock. Eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Venomous. Best to keep your distance. Varric stepped closer, eyeing the reptile with interest. This is a predator. It just lies there. It's conserving energy, Jack explained. It can strike faster than you can blink. Varric scoffed. I doubt it could penetrate my skin. Dr. Carter stepped between Varric and the snake. Let's not test that theory. We're here to observe, not interact. They moved on to a meadow filled with wildflowers and buzzing insects. Susan pointed out various spiders in their webs. Earth spiders come in thousands of species, she explained. Some hunt, some trap, some even live underwater. Melix recorded several specimens with obvious enthusiasm. The diversity is incredible. And you say some are dangerous to humans. Susan nodded. Several species have venom that can be deadly to us. We've developed antivenins for most, but not all. Varric laughed loudly, startling a nearby bird into flight. Your most deadly creatures are these tiny things. On my world, our smallest predator is the size of your car vehicles. Susan's smile tightened. Size isn't everything. Some of our smallest creatures are the most deadly. Primitive defense mechanisms, Varric said dismissively. True power comes from strength and skill, not tricks and poisons. As they returned to the lab that afternoon, Susan showed the alien slides of various venomous creatures under microscopes. Melix was fascinated by the structures of the venom glands. Such elegant engineering, Melix said. Nature's perfect delivery systems. Philora studied the data on toxicity levels. These numbers are surprising. How can something so small produce such potent compounds? Millions of years of evolution, Dr. Carter explained. It's all about efficiency. Verex yawned loudly. When will we see your real predators? The large cats and bears I've heard about. We'll visit the big cat sanctuary next week, Jack said. But remember, no interaction. Verex flexed his arms. Your rules remove all the fun. Later that evening, Dr. Carter met with Susan and Jack in his office. I'm concerned about Verex, Susan said. He keeps trying to provoke the animals we observe. Jack nodded. He's looking for a fight. Typical warrior mentality. Needs to prove himself. Dr. Carter sighed. Professor Zilforax assured me he'd keep him in line. Tomorrow we start the rainforest segment of the study. The biodiversity there might keep him distracted. Or give him more opportunities to cause trouble, Jack warned. The Amazon has plenty of creatures that won't back down from a challenge. Susan gathered her notes. I'm scheduled to give them a presentation on arachnids tomorrow. Maybe if Verex understands how deadly our smallest creatures can be, he'll show more respect. Good luck with that, Jack said with a grim smile. From what I've seen, Chronarians don't respect anything they can't physically defeat. Dr. Carter looked out his window at the alien ship glowing softly in the distance. Let's just make sure everyone comes back alive. The last thing we need is an interstellar incident because someone underestimated a spider. Little did they know how prophetic those words would prove to be. The spaceship landed with a soft hiss on the concrete pad at NASA's International Xenobiological Research Center. Steam rose from beneath the silver craft as its doors slowly opened. 3 tall figures stepped out into the bright sunlight. They squinted their large oval eyes against Earth's intense light. Professor Zilforax led the way. His purple skin glistened with a thin layer of protective gel. Behind him walked Verex, the champion warrior of the Chronarian Empire. Verex stood nearly 8 feet tall with muscles that rippled under his thick, armored skin. The third alien, Melix, carried several scanning devices and kept looking around with excited clicks from his breathing tubes. A fourth alien named Philora followed, her 6-fingered hands already taking notes on a translucent tablet. The air here is so thin, complained Verex, adjusting his breathing apparatus. How do humans survive in such weak conditions? Professor Zilforax waved a dismissive hand. They evolved here. They know no better. A small group of humans walked toward them from the main building. A man with glasses and a lab coat led the way. Welcome to Earth, the man said with a smile. I'm Dr. Alan Carter, lead xenobiologist for the research center. Professor Zilforax bent slightly in the formal greeting of his people. We are honored to be the first students from the Galactic Academy to study your world. Alan gestured to the woman beside him. She had curly brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and wore hiking boots with her lab coat. This is Susan Matthews, our expert on arachnids and venomous creatures. Susan smiled and waved. Looking forward to showing you our 8-legged friends. The third human, a broad-shouldered man with short hair and watchful eyes, stepped forward. Jack Parker. I handle security and field operations. Verex looked down at Jack. The human only came up to the middle of his chest. You? Security. Verex let out a rumbling laugh. I could break you with one hand. Jack didn't flinch. Maybe. But we're not here to fight, are we? Professor Zilforax made a sharp clicking sound that silenced Verex. We apologize. Verex is our empire's greatest warrior. He sometimes forgets his diplomatic training. The group walked toward the main building. Susan matched her pace with Melix, who bombarded her with questions about Earth's ecosystem. Is it true your planet has over 10 million species? Melix asked. Actually, we're still discovering new ones every day. Susan replied. Some scientists think it might be closer to 30 million. Varric snorted. Quantity over quality. On our world, even the plants can fight back against predators. Oh, we have those too, Susan said with a smile. Plants that eat insects, trees that poison the soil around them to kill competition, vines that strangle other plants. Aylin led them into a large conference room with a view of the surrounding forest. We've prepared a presentation about the areas we'll be visiting during your stay. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the table. It showed a rotating globe of Earth. We'll start with local ecosystems, Alan explained. Then move to the Amazon rainforest, which has the highest biodiversity on the planet. Philora leaned forward with interest. Your planet is predominantly water. How strange. Your first assignment from the Academy is to catalog Earth's apex predators, correct? Jack asked. Professor Zilphorax nodded. We are particularly interested in how such a low-gravity planet produced predators without significant strength advantages. Varric flexed his massive arms. On my world, I have defeated every hunting beast in combat. I look forward to testing myself against your best. Susan and Alan exchanged concerned glances. That won't be possible, Alan said firmly. Many of our predators are endangered, and all are protected by law. Varric laughed. Protected? From what? They should be protected from me. Professor Zilphorax silenced him again. We will respect your rules, Dr. Carter. We are here to learn, not to prove strength. As they continued discussing the research plan, Jack watched the aliens carefully. The warrior, Varric, kept looking out the window at Earth's forest with a dismissive expression. Jack had seen that look before in his military days. It was the look of someone who underestimated their opponent. On Earth, that was always a dangerous mistake.